Network. Today is Friday, May 22nd, 2026. It is the eve of Memorial Day, a day we honor those whose lives were taken away on battlefields and oceans across the world in order to preserve our American ideals. I want you to notice I did not say gave their lives away. We hear that a lot. No one wants to die for this country. All of us want to live for this country. But soldiers understand that in order to live for this country, some must die for this country. That death is not willingly, it is better described as valiantly. Tomorrow, we honor those valiant souls who stood up and moved forward while too many of us cowered and boldly ate barbecue sandwiches and drank beer while courageously watching baseball games. Their bloated bellies in no way symbolize the bloated dead bodies that lied too long in the swamps of Vietnam and the Philippines, or the bullet riddled bodies that lied too long in the at Omaha Beach. Tomorrow should be a solemn day. Yet there, yet let there be some joy, but let our joy be tempered by a remembrance of those who fought the good fight so that you could have a good day. Now, just keep in mind that as we remember those dead, that our president seeks to erect a monument to himself that will hide the view of the graves of those who died in service of this country. This special edition of Issues and Answers, excuse me, will feature a guest who led many of those valiant souls. He is a man who has likely seen far too many zippered bags filled with those faceless souls who remind us of the book of Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 8, which says, "Then I heard the voice of Adonai saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? So I said, here I am, send me." Let us never forget those who said, send me, walked forward when too many of us stepped back and ran to the barbecue grill. I remind you that this program is broadcasted live over Facebook, LinkedIn, X, YouTube, Roku, Fanbase, and most other popular streaming services. All of our programs are archived on YouTube and can be viewed by anyone at any time. Our subject matter is always meant to be informative, entertaining, and filled with truth. We always seek to exemplify the motto of WCEG Digital Media Enterprises by speaking life into the community. Please understand that the views and opinions expressed by my guest and me are our own and do not reflect the views and opinions of WCEG Media Enterprises management. Now, on to our guest, retired Brigadier General Shawn Harris. This is General Harris's second time on Issues and Answers. He is both a history maker and a political shaker. But before I introduce him to you, please allow me to remind or inform you of his background. He is a retired brigadier general and a Polk County cattle producer. He returned home to Georgia after 40 years of military service. His wife, Carla, a family physician, have 5 sons and 4 grandchildren, and run a first-generation grass-fed cattle farm in Rockmart, Georgia. He grew up in Blakely, Georgia, on his family's farm. After high school, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, rising to the rank of sergeant. Later, he got his Bachelor of Arts in agribusiness at Tuskegee University, where he was a member of Omega Psi Phi, and where he and his wife met and married. After 9/11, he was deployed as an infantry commander in Afghanistan, where he saw extensive combat. He led a team into Liberia during the Ebola outbreak in 2014. He later served as senior military advisor in posts around the world. He was awarded several military honors for leadership and valor, and he also earned a degree of strategic studies at the Army War College. I believe that's in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, I think. As of the 2020, as a 2024 nominee, he was able to build a wide-ranging coalition of Democrats, independents, and common sense Republicans who ultimately garnered more votes than any other Democrat saw in over a decade. Not one to leave his team behind, he is back to finish the fight to make Northwest Georgia continue to be a great place to live and raise a family. Welcome, General Harris, to WCEG.
Hey, it's so great to be on your show. Looking forward to a great conversation. The next time I'm on your show, the only thing you got to say is, hey, that guy's name is Shawn Harris. He's a cattle farmer, grandpa, and he's just looking to be a congressman. That's it.
No, you lived the life that we all should be proud of, and believe it or not, uh, the life you have lived is a template for someone else coming behind you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to start off with this, General Harris. You are running to represent Georgia's 14th congressional district in the United States Congress. Surprising the experts, you took your district's primary election to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene to a runoff election. Even though you lost the runoff election, your showing was stronger than expected. To what do you attribute your performance in that election?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. What really it comes down to what I call just blocking and tackling. We're not doing anything special here in Northwest Georgia, but what we're doing is doing it. We're actually knocking on doors, we're actually making phone calls, we're actually going out and talking to everybody in every zip code, don't matter what way or how do you vote. We don't even look at that. It doesn't make me a difference if you're a Democrat, independent, or Republican. Myself and my team, we're going to come and knock on your door, sit down with you, break bread with you, answer your questions because I believe that right now you hear a lot of people talking about affordability. I talk about it as kitchen table issues. And because we got so many different kitchen table issues that are hitting us right now, that is why people continue to vote for me. And that is why in this last election that we just had, we pulled this thing down by 25 points, which is, I think, some of the best that ever happened in the country. But I can know here in Georgia, the district that I'm in is the reddest district in the country. But I am confident with our work and all the help from all your viewers from around the world and in the United States, we're going to win this thing come November because every day the Trump administration is doing something that actually does make it different. You're a Democrat, independent, or Republican that makes you say, wait a minute, life is not good anymore, and I'm concerned that it's not going to help my kids or grandkids out. And that's why people are coming to vote for me on a daily basis. And I just look forward to November.
Thank you, sir. Uh, I know that agriculture is very important to you,
Mhm.
and our agriculture community is suffering due to recent severe storms here in Georgia and the war in Iran.
Yeah.
What needs to happen to improve their lives?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I said this a few nights ago on a news station. Where on that news station I'm speaking as General Harris talking about the war because of my strategic background and in that national security arena. And what I said on that show in that capacity was this: that Georgia and the United States, but specifically Georgia and Northwest Georgia, where I live, the center of gravity is our farmers and small businesses. And as soon as we see farmers and small businesses start to push back on this administration, that is when you're going to see Northwest Georgia flip, and you're going to see the great state of Georgia flip blue. And every day, based on this war that we're in, based on what things that happen in the street of Hormuz right now, farmers cannot get the fertilizer that they need. Farmers are right now, and I'm a farmer, so I know this for a fact. But farmers are paying unbelievable amount for diesel fuel. Truck drivers are paying an unbelievable amount for diesel fuel. And because all these costs are so high, that is being passed on to the customer from a small business point of view. But from a farm point of view, the question is, would the farmers be able to get a crop in the field? And based off Donald Trump's trip to China that he just had last week, do we even have anybody to sell our products to? So I know I talked about a lot there. I love to unpack it, but at the end of the day, when it comes to Georgia, our number one industry is agriculture. And right now, our farmers are hurting from natural disasters, from the fires that we just had a few weeks ago, all the way to drought that we're dealing with, to also man-made problems that we got with this war of choice by fertilizer and diesel and everything else that I mentioned before.
By the way, General, anytime you want to unpack anything, you can do it right here. It's your time to shine, sir. Uh, just 2 days ago, I heard a survey that basically states that Americans are fed up with the meanness of partisan bickering. Most Americans do not understand, and this is important, that the largest voting bloc in this country are independent voters, not Democrats or Republicans. So, how does this largest voting bloc figure into your campaign and your platform?
Yeah, you're exactly right. When we look at our independents here in our district, is I'm roughly taking 90% of them, and I fully expect this time I'm going to take 100% of them, because when it comes down to our independents are saying, President Trump, you said you wasn't going to put us into a war. President Trump, you said you're going to bring down the cost of living. President Trump, you said that you were going to treat people with duty and respect. And President Trump, you said you're going to release the Epstein files. None of those things that I just said, he's done. And the independents and pretty much everybody across the board are saying enough is enough. I would tell you, it's even another survey that came out that's talking about even the mega people that support him, but young people. I'm talking that group that 25 and under are now turning away from the president. And at the same time, they're going to turn away from Clay. I'm not going to say they're going to come and vote for me. But if that base walks away from Mega, because Mega is not the Republican Party, it's just a small little sliver. They very noisy. They make you think they big, but the reality of it is, I think the Republican Party is going to start pushing back. And you saw a little bit of yesterday with the Senate when they pushed back on the president with this crazy bill that he tried to push forward, where he wants to pay all his buddies off for breaking into the Capitol. At the end of the day, I think as we get closer and closer to November, you're going to see more and more people separate themselves from him, and more people are going to say, okay, enough is enough. Because one thing I'll say, and I close it this way, Iran has figured out that the Strait of Hormuz could potentially be more important to them than a nuclear weapon. So right now, they're not waking up tomorrow saying we're going to open the Strait of Hormuz up. They are going to say, you know what? The United States, if we don't open this thing back up, Donald Trump and the Americans are going to hurt more than we are. And you got to keep in mind, when you look at Iran leadership does not have to answer to the people. Our president and all of us as leaders, we have to answer to our people. And I got a funny feeling, if this war continues to go for another 4 weeks, up to 6 months, 6 months takes us up to the election, you're going to see a whole lot of people in Washington, D.C. lose their jobs. And this whole thing is going to flip simply because of the decision that we did to get into this war in Iran.
Since since we just mentioned that war in Iran, and I heard Senator Tillis
Yes.
yesterday, you
Mm-hmm.
know, outraged
Mm-hmm.
about this $2 billion outrage. But when it comes to the war in Iran, and I've heard this, I guess, from Iranian delegates or their acolytes, whoever, but where the word is out that when it comes to war, that America doesn't have the stomach for it, and that America is weak when it comes to war. As someone who has been in the military, and I want your opinion on this too,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Americans necessarily, our soldiers, are weak when it comes to war. I think it's we are against unjust and unnecessary wars.
Yeah, I would tell you, our military is the greatest military walk the face of the earth today. No fear they'll go do anything we ask them to do. However, one of the things I learned at the War College is the soldiers going to do what the American people asked them to do. That's the way our system's set up. However, wars are won and lost by political or by politicians. And one of the things I've said in many other capacities is this. I was saying at the very beginning of this war, if we got into it, the first thing the president needs to do is to go to Congress, and explain to the American people why we are getting in this war. What is it in the interest, national interest to the United States? And if he can't do that, we should not get in it. And then if we get in it, we learn a couple of things from the Iraq war. What is the exit strategy? We're going to beat them, but how do we
Mm-hmm.
get out of it, and how do we define winning? And really, to be also honest with you, how much is it going to cost us? Because the president skipped all of those steps, now we got ourselves in a little bit of a situation, and some people don't want to say the word, but I'll say the word right here on your show. We're in a quagmire where we might be in a situation that I'm not sure who's blocking who when it comes to the Street of Hormuz. Are we blocking it, or Iran's blocking it? At the end of the day, the world is hurting. And at the end of the day, to get back to your other part of your question, I believe the American people, if the president would have came in and told them why we was getting into it and made sure they understood it, they would have the will to be in this fight. But because he did not tell them that, now he's got himself caught in a situation that people are saying, why is my gas prices so high and this and that? And you tell me every 2 weeks that we're going to be out of this thing, but it seems we never get to those 2 weeks. The reality is the will of the people is, hey, you got to come and tell us the truth. And if you're not going to tell us the truth, we need to stop right now and get out of there. And as you can notice, Congress is starting to hear the will of the people, because just yesterday in the Senate actually pushed forward on the war acts. I probably got that mixed up. But
War
at the
Powers
end of
Act.
the day, War Powers Act. But at the end of the day, it was supposed to happen today in the House. And right there at the last minute, because the House didn't have the numbers they needed, they pulled it, because it would have made sure that Congress finally stood up and did their job at the will of the people to say, you got to come in here and explain to us. And if you don't, we're not going to give you any more money for this war that you actually got us in.
Wow, it sort of flows into my next question. Uh, we are at war, and I understand that you must focus on the needs of your constituents in Northwest Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, and you've already said this, their welfare is not disconnected from the war that we are involved in the Middle East. We have a former field grade officer making general grade decisions. In
Yes.
fact, he has led to this has led to the release of more than a dozen senior military officers, including multiple four-star generals. They have been removed or asked to retire under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a sustainable trend during wartime?
Not at all. Not at all. Good Lord, get me to Congress. The first thing I'm doing is making sure I'm asking for him to resign. Period. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. I never heard that. At the end of the day, thank you for your service, Mr. Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, whatever you want to call yourself. But he is clearly outside of his skill set right now. Because at the end of the day, if you're firing senior leaders with decades and decades and decades of war experience, and now you find them while we actually in a war, and some people are starting to question, are we winning or losing? That conversation's coming up, and you're actually asking the Secretary of the Army to step down, your chief of this to step down, and all these Secretary of the Navy to step down. That right there tells me something is not right. And you know what's not right? It's the Secretary of War, because that's what he wants to call himself. He needs to be fired. And I got a funny feeling. I got a funny feeling that it won't be long. And President Trump is going to say, okay, you got me in this situation and you can't help me get out of it. You're fired. Because as we speaking to you right now, if I'm not mistaken, the director of intelligence just resigned. So another person off the Trump administration at the highest
Wow.
levels when it comes to intelligence. And if you remember, what she put out at the very beginning of this war, she testified to Congress that the Iranians were not producing a nuclear weapon. And the president said, I don't care what she has to say. I don't believe it. I'm going a different direction. At the end of the day, I'm not saying that she was great on her job either. But what I am saying is, just like the Secretary of War is getting rid of people, the president now is saying, okay, I got myself in a situation. I might need to go back and get some people in this office that really know what they're doing so that he can salvage the next 2.5 years of his legacy when it comes to being president of the United States. So just to close this out, I get to DC. The first thing I'm doing is reaching across the aisle to every veteran that's in Congress. And I guarantee you, every last one of us, Democrat and Republican and Independent, will all agree that Pete, the Secretary of War, needs to resign and leave right now, period.
Wow.
Let me just say
General,
one more
go
thing
right
since you
ahead.
got
No,
me
keep
going.
on. No, go ahead.
And the reason why I want to say it is because he made history yesterday for the wrong reason. We have never, ever had a Secretary of Defense, now he calls himself Secretary of War, ever go out on the campaign trail, because what we do in the military, when we put the uniform on, or when we the civilian that's actually running the military, yes, they're connected to a party, but they're not the ones that go out and get on the campaign trail for somebody. So what he just did the other day in Kentucky should say to everybody, anybody that wear the uniform or used to wear the uniform, say, okay, that's completely out of bounds. This guy, if he wants to be a politician, go be a politician. But if you're going to run the most powerful military that walks the face of the earth, do the damn job. And right now, he's not doing the job.
General, I mentioned something earlier, and it's part of your resume, and it is part of this conversation. But I mentioned that he was a field grade officer. Most of the public doesn't understand what that means. And you attended the war college. That's basically if I remember correctly from my training, that's a qualification, or a step that all generals must take.
Yes,
So
it is.
that being said, how inadequate or unprepared is this man to be leading where he's leading?
Yeah, I don't want to say that field grade officers are not at the top of the grade, because they are.
Mm-hmm.
However, to make it where our everyday civilian individuals that are following the show can understand, a field grade officer, that's a major, lieutenant colonel. Those officers, if you would take them out to the civilian world, they are middle management. They make a lot of decisions. They make a lot of things happen. They fight our wars. They do a lot of great things for us. However, they are not generals that are at the most senior C wing of your corporation. And oh, by the way, you're exactly right. The Army War College, the Air College, and all these things, the Naval College, in order to become a general, or at least be potentially looked at, you have to be in the top 5% of your peers to get into one of these most senior schools that we have. The Army's called the Army War College. We got a Naval College. We got the Air Force. We got all these different things. And then some people even go to Harvard and different other universities, which is all great. But the other thing is, normally the civilian, suppose the person was not a general officer that took over our military as the Secretary of Defense. What you would find in those people's background, that's probably somewhere in their career, they also went to a school that was at the same level of the United States Army War College, because you want to make sure that they understand that the job is not only just here in the United States, the job is actually helping keeping the world peaceful. It's called the United States Army War College. I have on my ring today. I wear it every day. But at the school, we're taught, how can you get to peace? How can you get to bring down conflict? Where if you listen to our Secretary of War, he's always talking in a way that he wants to fight some more. No, that's why it's not qualified, because this is not a video game. This is
Mhm.
real. People are dying, and people have already died in this particular war, and their families, like you started to show off, their families are going to be going to their grave sites tomorrow or the next day or Monday and saying, did they die for the right reasons or not?
Yeah, I was about to mention earlier that when I introduced the question, that I may have mentioned before, that although I never went to West Point, I did go to their prep school,
Mm-hmm.
and that, to my understanding, part of the war college curriculum involves, at least a portion of it involves diplomacy. And
Yes, yes, 100%. And I'll touch a little other piece of it is when you're at the War College or the Army War College, not only do you have Army personnel, but you have Air Force, you have Marine Corps, you have Navy, but guess what else you have in there? You have the FBI there, you have CIA there. So that is one of those areas that all of us that are moving up, we're all in the same setting, just from different organizations, but we're looking through a lens of the world and saying, how can we keep this place peaceful if we ever get to the next level? And most don't make it to the next level, but the ones that make it to the next level, they understand that the jobs that they're getting, none of those jobs are easy, and none of those jobs that we take for granted. So right now, I think the Secretary of War is completely over his skids, and like I said, the best thing he could do for the country is just resign and go write a book or something.
uh, today, thank you, sir. Today, it was announced that our military is cutting back on medical training.
Mm-hmm.
I was a medical corpsman. Do you feel that the medical care for our active duty soldiers and our military veterans is in a state of decline? And if so, what remedies would you seek?
Yeah, I let me split that up. Let me talk active duty first.
Okay.
The reason why we see that is a couple of reasons why um, all type training, not only medical, flight training, all these different things are being cut right now, is because we have not got the money to fight this war of choice that we in. And every day they having to take money from one pot to play something else. Okay. And right now they taking it from the training location. So you'll be able to look and see where they're not flying helicopters like they used to, and they're not doing this particular training. However, still right now, everything for the individual soldier on the ground is just fine. However, if you wait for another 6, 7 months, you're going to start seeing the effect of that. Now, when you come back out to the VA in the world that you and I are in, the VA right now is still under attack as far as I'm concerned. And what I mean by that, we are still cutting people out of the VA when the VA is still short on doctors, nurses, and other specialists. It is still an adventure to try to get an appointment if you need an appointment. And then for right here in my part of Georgia, Northwest Georgia, We don't actually have that many VA facilities. We have one or two clinics, but you go to the clinic and the people at the clinic does an awesome job. I go there personally. But if you get to the clinic, they're going to do some things, but ultimately they give you an appointment for the VA in Atlanta. So now you got to drive to Atlanta for the real appointment. And if you don't go there, you get an appointment to the VA in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Mm.
That's what I'm saying. If you get older and older and older, it's 6 lanes of traffic to go into Atlanta. I don't
Mm.
care what time you're going, it's still always 6 lanes of traffic. So we have veterans that are not going to the apartments because they're scared to drive or they don't have anybody to drive them there. I want to make sure that instead of cutting back on the VA, let's put more VA facilities inside of these smaller districts that are rural so that our veterans, is 40,000 veterans here in my district, that they can actually get the things that they actually need instead of actually having to drive all the way to Atlanta. And I'll just going to tell you on June 16th, we will be doing a veterans forum where myself and a couple other general officers, we'll get it to y'all guys, and you're welcome to come. But we'll be doing a veterans forum just to talk to all our veterans across the board, and that's on the 16th or 17th of June. I'll make sure I get that information to y'all guys.
Yeah, please do. I would love to come. I would absolutely love to be there. Uh, you just reminded me of an experience I had in Louisville, Kentucky, taking my father-in-law to the VA hospital. And while we were there, a gentleman walked in, a veteran, who was having a mental crisis.
Mm-hmm.
But the facility was close enough and he knew enough that if he could just get there, if he
Mm-hmm.
could just get there, that he could get the help that he needed. And I think that the public doesn't is not educated enough to realize that we have veterans out here having all sorts of health challenges that actually need to get to facilities that are nearby
Yeah.
and staffed well.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Veterans are struggling every day. One of the things I always talk about and try to put all my support behind is because we still basically have 22 soldiers per day committing suicide. That is 22 too many. And I want to make sure that we have those services set up so the person need to call somewhere is somewhere somebody's there to answer the phone that know how to talk to you to help you get to the next day. And I'm concerned that currently right now that is an area that the VA is cutting is the people who actually work those 1-800 numbers to ensure that if you're in a crisis, somebody's going to answer the phone. And I think that's a disservice. I say all the time this: it is easy to say thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to show it. And
Mm-hmm.
and and because we are currently in a war, you can call it whatever you want to call it. Something's fundamentally wrong if we already in another war, but we're not 100% taking care of the ones that we have already put through the ringer. And I will tell you, and you know it for a fact, nothing in the military is easy. Period. Not your first day or your last day. Nothing is easy. So I'm a firm believer that when you get out, we as the American people owe you not only to say thank you for your service, but we owe you to make sure that we taking care of you, making sure that we taking care of your spouse, and when you pass away, we make sure that we take care of your spouse and your kids.
Wow. Um, I totally agree with you. Uh, General Harris, you sort of touched on this before. I just want to go back for the purpose of our
Mhm.
audience. Um, as a congressperson, part of your responsibility is involved in the War Powers Act,
Yes.
and during your 40 years of service, this act was instituted in 1973
Yeah.
to curtail the actions by the great President Nixon
Hmm.
during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think this is a concern of your constituency? Uh, one of the problems, and this is not part of my question, but I'm bringing this up, is that because we no longer have the draft,
Hmm.
uh, the public is able, too many of the public are able to distance themselves from what being in combat, what being in war is all about, and the
Hmm.
toll that it takes. So, but even, with that being said, do you think that there's a concern in your constituency about the ignoring of the War Powers Act by this administration?
Yeah, I'll answer it two ways. The easy question is yes, but let me back off that a little bit because it's so many other things that are actually hitting our the people I want to represent in the face on a daily basis. They just first trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family. Then they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out, okay, I got to come up with enough gas to go to work. And then after a week and I get paid, did I actually get enough to justify going to work? So with all of those things are going on, from what I can, when I'm talking to my voters out there, they say to me, Shawn, first of all, I don't actually understand this process. And they heard something on the news that said after 60 days, the president was supposed to come and ask for permission to actually be in this war or he got to end it. And then they said that if he can actually write a letter that says extend me out for 30 more days so he can get 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now they say to me, well, he didn't do any of that. He's saying, and the Secretary of Defense is saying that because we're in a ceasefire, the days don't count anymore. And what I always go back and tell them is this: that is not how the law was ever wrote. And two things need to happen. You need to call your congressman and tell them to do their job and hold the president accountable. And I believe when the Congress go back in June, they go back June 1st, you're going to see that Congress is going to start holding them accountable because right now we got ourselves in a bad situation. And the president, every other day, he comes up on Truth Social and say, tomorrow I'm going to start dropping bombs on him again. And then he
Mm-hmm.
changes his mind. At some point, he's going to have to make some kind of decision, and we're going to be well past. I think right now, if I got my numbers right, we're probably around 120 plus days of being in this particular war. And if it's not named on the back end, the question is, do the veterans or the soldiers that are over there get certain benefits? That's what certain
Mm-hmm.
people don't realize. It's the reason why we name something something. Because when you name it, war on terrorism, is no doubt that on the back end you were in a war. But if it's not named, if they call it an operation or they calling it whatever you want to call it, then on the back end you may find out that you wasn't really on a deployment. You was just on a hey, you just left home for a few days, and
Yeah.
that's not cool. So I want to make sure that we do everything the right way. And the last piece I'll say on it, in the rural community, not taking anything from my brothers and sisters that live in the city, but in the rural community, it is still a fact. In order to better yourself or get that opportunity, we still go into the military. That
Oh my.
is your way off the dirt road. And then the other piece I'll say is this: the military has turned into a family business. That simply means if your grandpa was in the military, 9 times out of 10, your dad, your mom, your sister, your brother, and your kids are in the military. That
Yes.
means right now, less than 0.5% of the American people have ever served in the military. And the ones that are serving are the same ones that's been serving since North Korea. I mean, since the Korean War, since Vietnam, since the Persian Gulf, since whatever. Because the
Yeah.
reason why I can say that is because you strip all that stuff away from me, calling me General Harris and all of that. Guess what? I'm just dad, and I got two sons in the military.
There you
So
go.
so I got skin in the game
Hmm.
because I have two sons in the military, and they're gonna do what they need to do for the American people because they raised their hand. But
Hmm.
it's my job. My job is to make sure that when they over there doing whatever they need to do for us, that we doing everything we supposed to be doing to take care of them and let everybody do their job. And I'm saying to Congress right now, when you get back in June, stop bypassing this and get it done so that we can hold people accountable for this war that we chose to get into.
Uh, General Harris, you brought up something that I was about to touch on, and you sometimes I think you're reading my mind. Uh, uh, we're living in the age of AI,
Yes.
and broadband in rural America is lacking tremendously.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit, sir?
Yeah, I can talk about it because I'm praying right now that my computer keeps working so I can keep talking to you. So, and I say that in a joking way, but I will tell you, here in the rural communities, we are still, some areas are still waiting on broadband to get there. And what concerns me is during the Biden administration, they were making a major push for broadband. I'm not 100% sure is that broadband still being pushed or somebody's even checking on it, or was that money cut away from those companies that was actually putting it in? I will tell you this. When I get to Congress, that's one of the areas that I'm going to be saying, hey, Northwest Georgia, where do we stand by county in broadband? Because many people now actually get their degrees online. They don't
Mhm.
actually go to the university. Even if they actually go for the university for a couple of years, they'll come back and do it online because it's cheaper. But nah, in order to do something online, you got to have good internet. Every time I stop by McDonald's or any of these fast food restaurants, especially early in the morning, it hurts my heart every time because I see some lady sitting in her car, not really eating breakfast, but she's sitting there trying to get her paper turned in because she's trying to use the broadband internet from McDonald's. Next time any of you go out, you go and watch, you'll see somebody's
Hmm.
parked real close to that door so that they can try to get that because now restaurants are saying if you don't buy something, you can't use our internet. And
Right.
so Starbucks built their whole entire business around come on in, get on the internet, and if you go to any Starbucks, you'll see a whole bunch of people sitting in there all day. I don't know
Hmm.
if people actually ask themselves the question, why are they sitting at Starbucks all day if they should have internet at the house?
Yeah.
That's what we gotta make sure if we're gonna have a equal playing field, we gotta have internet everywhere across the board. And right now in the rural community is lacking.
I'm jumping on a bunch of different subjects, but they're part of your platform, I hope. Uh, uh, Labor protections for our workers, uh, working people, fair pay, safe conditions. OSHA, are they still even in existence?
Yeah, yeah. I hope they are. I would tell you the labor unions across the great state of Georgia and really across the United States has backed me. I'm doing everything I can, even before I get to Congress, to ensure that our labor unions can still have very good jobs across the board because I believe people should be receiving a fair wage. Because right now, in the great state of Georgia, um, if I don't know how you're making it if you get minimum wage, especially right now as high as cost is across the board. I don't know how you're making it. Every time I look at, and I'm not saying anything about people that go to see the Atlanta Braves or anybody that goes to see any other sports thing, but every time I look at an NBA basketball game at night, I catch myself not watching the game. I'm actually looking up in the stands saying, where are these people getting all this money from? Where are they getting all this money from? And I'll tell you what I noticed the other night, and this is just a Shawn, I'm a little different. I noticed the other night that, and I'm not going to say what game it was, but it came on last night. I noticed that they actually had the blue shirts put over the seats
Yes.
to make it look like that place was full.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
somebody somewhere is saying, look, that I can't afford those tickets anymore. And
Mhm.
if you can't afford the ticket, now the question then comes also into this. Can you afford to feed your kids? Can you afford to make your rent? Can you afford even to drive to work? And I think these are all the things that are making people in this district, but really across the entire state, but specifically in this district, are saying, you know what? I'm going to give Shawn a chance because he has been consistent since the day that he actually started running. He had not changed his talking points, what he's trying to get at. And what I really love about Shawn is if I stand up here at Walmart or I stand up here at Tractor Supply in Cedartown, Georgia, he's gonna stop by. He's coming by there at least once or twice a day because those are my two main stores. Because guess what? I live in small town America. That's all we got is Walmart and Tractor Supply and a couple of gas stations.
Yeah. I remember talking with you on the last program about, you said you're not a man that doesn't mind getting in the dirt. And we had a
No,
little picture of that.
no, no,
Uh,
not at all.
we're into the last quarter of our program, sir, and I'd like to give you an opportunity now, number one, to give us your website
Mhm.
for our viewers to either contact you or send in donations, and also, sir, for your closing remarks.
Yeah, what I would love to say is, first of all, thank you to everybody that watch your show. Thank you to you and your team. Anytime you want me to be on, the answer is always going to be yes. And then the other thing I would say before anybody, because money's tight now. I'm a firm believer that money's tight. Before you think about giving me anything, please just pray for me. I try to always make anything that I do look easy because the good Lord has given me the ability to carry the weight. That's my job. But on the flip side of the coin, if you can get to my campaign, that's ShawnForGeorgia.com. You can spell that Shawn any kind of way you want to. I own every last one of them, every last one. But I will tell you this. Like I said, we're doing an event, and I'll make sure we get this to you. We're doing an event in mid-June for our veterans. And I want to ask all of our veterans to go to my website, sign up, come, because we want to have a conversation veteran to veteran. I have some other very senior veterans that are going to be with me on the stage that night. But at the other piece of that, I actually have a veteran that's also running for Congress, but she actually worked at the VA. So we're going to have some
Wow.
concrete things that we can discuss and try to help these veterans and their spouses get a better life with what's going on. So again, I want to say thank you. At the end of the day, we cannot be successful without people like yourself and everybody out there around the United States and the world that's supporting us.
Well, thank you so much, General. I just wrote down and I'm putting it on my calendar for June 16th. I would really like to be there and be not be a part of the discussion, but to hear the discussion. So thank you so much, sir, for being a guest on WCEG, and we look forward to another conversation maybe in November.
There you go. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, this is just a great program. It's always a pleasure to speak with General Harris and get insight on his campaign and the things that he will and can do for his constituency. Uh, as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, here we are on the eve of Memorial Day. And as I said earlier, it's a day to honor those men and women who did not give their life away, but had their lives taken away while fighting to preserve the American ideals of liberty and justice for all. What a noble and valiant undertaking. Liberty and justice for all. You know, death is a very expensive way to pay for something too many of you take for granted. All Memorial Day means to you is baking meat on a grill to the point you burn out the flavor and create those black marks that are carcinogens, and you cover that up with barbecue sauce. Those black stripes you see on that meat are where the carcinogens lie. That is not my opinion. That's a medical fact. But perhaps this is your version of putting your life in jeopardy to preserve the values of our country. You know, last year, an African American woman debated with me about our right and our obligation to vote. She forcefully averred that her brother was wounded in the Desert Storm War. She stated that he never stands for the national anthem and he does not vote. She stated her brother told her that he fought and nearly died so that she could exercise her right not to vote. Now, in theory, he was correct. But in reality, she was as wrong as one could be. But I learned a long time ago that when one cannot argue with ignorance, as Yeshua once said to his disciples in Luke 9:5, quote, and whoever does not receive you when you leave town, shake the dust off your feet as a witness against them, end quote. In other words, if people choose to remain ignorant and unappreciative of what you are trying to do for them, don't stress about it. Move on. Now, I must confess that I harbor an impatience with insolent ignorance. There are those who are just determined to sink in a cesspool of ignorance, even when you throw them a lifeline of truth. Yeshua understood that. His disciples learned that. I embrace that. But I'm going to talk about it because it's happening to us right now, and too many of you elect to remain arrogantly stuck on stupid. Before I get into some national stuff, let me talk about what's going on right here in Metro Atlanta. Years ago, I interviewed on this program a candidate for mayor of South Fulton, of the city of South Fulton. There were photographs and actions that showed this person had character issues. Yet he was peacock proud of keeping South Fulton the chocolate city of America. That's his quote. He hated police. He hated anyone who did not think as he. He even hated the name his parents gave to him. Yet his city found those issues tolerable and worthy of leadership. The city of South Fulton got exactly what it deserved. A man who stepped into a home where he did not belong, a man who bought luxury items that benefited himself on the taxpayer money, a man who used taxpayer funds to travel first class internationally to benefit himself and not his city. But the city of South Fulton remains hard-headed. Even after being warned not to allow a party to happen that was illegally too close to where people voted, the current mayor allowed the party to continue. She was even warned by State Representative Roger Bruce. You would think that after the President of the United States sent his attack dogs to Fulton County to remove ballots cast in 2020 in an inane pursuit to rewrite history and intimidate voters, that the mayor of the city of South Fulton would do everything possible to keep the demonic eyes of a recalcitrant president off of her city and her constituents. But that leadership quality is blatantly lacking. If such behaviors continues, the voters of the city of South Fulton may soon find that their indifference to character may eventually jeopardize their right to speak through their votes. There is an old saying that people don't get the government they want, they get the government they deserve. Voting matters. Choices matter. You need to learn to stop voting for skin color or popularity and vote for character and energy. Most of you are too easily beguiled. You know what beguiled means? It's in the Bible. They talked about the serpent in the garden was beguiling and got Eve to go along with something she knew was wrong. And most of you are too easily beguiled by smiling faces, kissing babies, shaking hands, and all of that nonsense. And all of that blinds you to looking at character. So, otherwise, if you don't start paying attention to character and energy, be prepared to be crapped on and ignored by political pragmatists who are actively working to disenfranchise and discourage the votes of people of color. And while I'm into that, and I want you to listen to this, America, and I want you to listen to this, South Fulton, the city of South Fulton. It is my understanding now that people in South Fulton who are speaking out about the unethical behavior of the mayor and her coterie of whoever they consider themselves, that people's lives are being threatened. People feel that they're being followed and intimidated and harassed. And people have filed complaints, not with the city of South Fulton, because they don't audio here. They don't trust the leadership or the people in government. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. And if we are not going to speak out about this and not going to change this, this is going to continue. So, South Fulton, city of South Fulton, you need to wake up. You need to be contacting your congressperson, your perhaps even in some instances, maybe you need to contact the FBI, because this is something that should not happen. Now, we go national here. In the latest escapade into this his world of madness, the president of the United States is authorizing a fund to build a fund of $2 billion for those who followed his orders to do something wild, in quotes, to occur on Inauguration Day, January 2020. That was the day the voters of America decided it was time for him to leave office. But he wanted a coup. His lawless bootlickers swarmed into Washington, D.C. Some with guns were deterred by our Secret Service, but others brought their flags and their flagpoles. And they used those flagpoles as spears to attack Capitol Police officers in their quest to stop the electoral process and kidnap and kill the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the House, and any other legislator they could get their hands on. Over 140 Capitol police officers were injured. Some died. All of this was visible on television. Yet the president called them loving and peaceful protesters. All who could be apprehended were prosecuted, and all were found guilty. Many of them were sentenced to prison. Now the president of the United States, who fancies himself as leader of the political party that champions law and order and, quote, back the blue, end quote, wants those who beat police officers and caused nearly $2 billion in damage to be compensated for by American taxpayers for participating in his attempted coup. As outrageous as this may sound, millions of you just don't care. In fact, as I can tell by my recent Facebook post, you are perfectly okay with this. It is no wonder that the mayors of the city of South Fulton and the president of the United States feel they can do whatever they want and suffer little or no consequences. They feel as if they are shepherds leading sheep to slaughter, and the lack of public outrage is proving them correct. Meanwhile, we have gubernatorial candidates in Georgia with blatantly racist commercials promising the public things over which they have no control. Let me tell you folks who listen to these commercials, the governor cannot deport anybody. The governor cannot deport anybody. But one of these guys is talking about deporting. You can be deported or departed. You know what departed means in my part of the world? Do you know what departed means? Do you know what it means when a governor says you can be deported or departed? He's talking about life and death. Some of y'all are okay with that. Man, unbelievable. In fact, as I'm on that subject, isn't it odd that in a country that professes Christian values, that a proven honorable candidate is ignored, and the Georgia voters are opting for two men who have serious character issues? Remember what I said earlier? People don't get the government they want. They get the government they deserve. Now, take care of yourselves, America. We are not living in Shangri-La. We are living in a country at war, and a country that is losing its grip on democracy simply because people like that woman I spoke about earlier are opting either to not vote or to elect those with dubious character issues. So ask yourself during this Memorial Day Eve, did those who died on the battlefields and oceans of the world die in vain? Are you that selfish or vain that life on this planet and this country is all about you and what you want? Think about that the next time you hear the President of the United States call those who died in war or who were prisoners of war losers. This guy wants to erect a monument to himself that hides the view of the tombstones of those soldiers buried at Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Is that how we honor Memorial Day? If you're silent about that, then when you talk about American values and American ideals and your love of country, if you're willing to sit by and be quiet about that, let me call you who you are. You are a walking, talking hypocrite. And that's a darn shame. So, ladies and gentlemen, uh, as far as scheduled installments of this issues and answers, we're going to be on hiatus for a couple of months, unless, that is, unless something big comes up. We can get other candidates who want to come on and speak truth to the American public, or something great happens. We're going to be on hiatus until approximately September, but we want you to stay tuned. Check out social media, because if anything does happen during that time, we'll be back on the air trying to keep you informed as we speak life into the community here on WCEG's Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr. Thank you for listening.